time grief we go. Gotta learn to let it go. Once asleep, now awake, feeling every breath you take.
Welcome to Wake the F Up podcast, hosted by Alix and David Long, where we talk about living consciously and helping people uncover their essential selves so that they can stop sleepwalking through life. Our goal is to create a safe space where our guests can share how they've decided to wake the F up and become mindfulness experts through their own emotional healing journey. Welcome to Wake the F Up podcast. I am your host, Alix Long, along with my husband, David Long. Welcome back to the podcast. We are so happy to have you back in this month of people pleasing. So this is our third episode in people pleasing, and it's such a hot topic. And last week we talked about authenticity in relationships. The week prior to that, if you missed the episodes, you should go back and watch them. My stepdaughter bravely came on and talked about how it's okay to not be okay in lots of ways, but especially in relation to losing her mother. And I find it to be an incredible progression where a lot of listeners have reached out, and I'm so grateful to hear your response. It's really challenging in life to be authentic. It is really challenging in trauma to put yourself out there and not be afraid of what people think about you. In healing, it is incredibly noble and brave and difficult at the same time to not be codependent or a people pleaser. So trying to fix things for others or make it better. I think one of the most important things that we can do in a relationship with others and a relationship with ourselves is to be honest. And mental psyche prevention of, further wounding can often make us dissociate, lie to ourselves, and protect others and ourselves from feeling our fears. And so as we progress on, we are excited today to bring some stuff that makes me laugh, because I think we were prepping for this episode. This is like the 12th time we've hit start and stop today, which is funny because we got into a tiff just 5 minutes ago about how we're going to announce arguably the happiest news of our marriage. And, we started this relationship with the fear, at least from my end, of living in truth. So being widows, it's incredibly hard, right? The world doesn't know how to handle you. And we always talk about that. And when you're in deep pain and deep loss, anything that you can find that brings you safety and peace, such as falling in love again, or even falling in friendship again, that builds into love like us, it's like self. It's like a drug. You need more of it because you're so dysregulated and you're so sad and you're so empty and you're so lost that you really don't believe that you can find happiness again. And you really don't believe that there's hope for you in a future. And the rest of the world doesn't quite understand that loathing feeling of and deep loneliness, that when your life is shattered, you believe that you're too old, you're too this, you're too broken, you're too something, to find love again. And we were lucky enough to take a chance on each other. And we've talked about it before, one of our first serious dates, and by serious date, I mean, we, attempted to like meet up for the first time. And David made a comment to me that might have spoken to my inner child wound, that said that we really need to get our dead people out of this room if we're going to have an honest chance at love. And to be honest, if you listen to the Abel Kehoe previous podcast, we have to work on that very statement every single minute of the day, including now. And it's hard because, I'll cry to say this, it's hard to get our dead people out of the way because they're such a huge part of us. We had whole lives with them. And you don't really want them to get out of the way because you didn't ask for them to die. And then you're faced with the healing that if you want to be honest and you want to be authentic and you want to stop people pleasing and you want to live in your truth in healing, you're going to have to face what was the past marriage that you dealt with and the past family life. And in order to start a new one, you constantly have this what did I want? What do I want to keep in terms of family life, marriage, and love? And what didn't work in the past from my woundedness that needs healing and work? How could I be better? Because as a widow, you sit with all this regret of the fear and the holding back, as we've talked about, and the people pleasing and the lying and the hiding of like the deepest essence of ourself, because we were afraid if we showed that side of ourself, we might lose our spouse, or we might lose our kids, or we might lose our jobs, or any of it. Like, right? We're all walking around like that, like very afraid to be authentic because the world is tough on us, right? You can't be yourself without being told that that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and I think this issue is a wonderful announcement that we're both really happy about and very excited. But the truth is, it's a great example of the yin and yang, or the dichotomy, if you will, of not being a people pleaser and exploring what you want. Because, for example, like being authentic is not, doesn't just happen and it's over. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm being my authentic self. It's complicated, and it's a daily
Well, being
it's a
authentic,
daily
yeah.
in soul review of who you are, what you want. And it doesn't just happen like this. You don't just automatically know what you want. You have to think about it.
Well, when we're authentic, right? So when we're authentic in a coupling, in our relationship, in our marriage, for us, if David is authentic about his heart and I'm authentic about my heart and my past, that mirroring of the truth can lick his wound. And a lot of times in our marriage, what makes us special, what makes us unique, what makes us faux pas, I mean, there's a lot of faux pas here, which make me laugh, but is that we stare at the mirroring of the truth inside of ourselves. And we have to make a decision in every choice that we make.
Well, I think that,
Can we see this part of each other? Can we not let it trigger our fear? And can we stay in love and know that we choose each other? That even though, as I often say, my biggest fear is I'm disposable, I'm secondary in all love in my life. I've always felt like I was chosen second. You know, Carl, with all due respect, loved the hell out of me, but he always chose his work over me. And my father chose my stepmother over me, like left my family and, you know, chose escape rather than dealing with being my father after difficulty of leaving my mother. And my mother has depression and she couldn't show up for me because of that. And I don't think that was a choice per se, but I think it always felt like I couldn't understand depression at the time. So I always felt like I was not being chosen. And in this marriage, it's interesting, right? Like I'm his second wife. He has a full family and a 20 plus year marriage prior to me. It can feel secondary. And I know that sometimes he feels the same, right? Like we're making choices. So interesting. We wanted you to think about like, what does it feel like to be in a second marriage post loss? It's different than divorce in some ways, but similar that we are choosing to make a family again. That means blending and combining our families, as we've talked about many times. That means choosing each other over and over again. That means choosing every part of the truth and the difficulty of each other's past lives. You know, it means holding space. It means being afraid sometimes. For me, a lot of times, being afraid that I'm enough to be sitting in this chair next to him, to be wearing this wedding ring.
well, I think that's the part of authenticity that's uncomfortable. Is that
Super uncomfortable.
A lot of times your authentic self is scared or
yeah. I have
fearful.
never monogrammed one thing, and like anyone who knows me knows I love a fucking monogram. I went to Auburn University, and let me tell you something.
Is that where you learned about the monogram?
They'll monogram everything. No, my mom was a monogrammer too. Like I grew up in a monogramming family, but I've never one time monogrammed one thing with an L on it for myself. Never. I struggle with that. I struggle with that because I still struggle sort of sitting in the role that I am alone. You know, I haven't changed my name yet. I'm in the mid process. It's taking way longer. It's super annoying because of a lot of complications for businesses and whatever. But I filled out the paperwork and sent it in today. And it's been a long time coming for that because I have 2 children with the last name Schubert. And I often think about Betsy, who had like every beautiful linen with L all over it, like everything. And I was like, how exciting it is to be a wife. And like, you don't even realize it when it's your first marriage that you're like, I hang a wreath and it's got a big L on it. I've got napkins and they have S on it. I had linens with like S everywhere. You know, it's like, there's subtle ways that the world is, you know, puts you in your role. And then when your role is shattered from your first life and then you try to recouple and choose it again, it's really challenging because authenticity makes you not sure who you are anymore. Like, I am your wife, and I've had to work hard to believe that I'm worthy of that title and that I belong here as the mother of this home. Because that, as you well know, represents me sitting in a chair that was once someone who's no longer alive and didn't deserve to die. It's role. I will be the mother figure that is there when Kate has her baby. I will be the mother figure that's there when she graduates, like I have been for them for all their graduations. I will be the mother figure that plans her wedding showers, that hopefully helps her zip up the dress that she gets married in, you know? And hopefully it's her mom's because her mom's was beautiful. But to be, there's a difference in being that role because you are, and believing that you're worthy of that role because you are. And that takes a lot of authenticity and choice. And as we went to announce our news today, like we got into a little bit of an argument because even in this, when the things that we're most passionate about, that we take the most time to privately choose for each other in growing our family and building our family and expanding this love and being authentically talking about it here on this podcast, which isn't easy all the time, by the way. We do a great job at it. I feel that we do, but it is not easy. There's lots of topics that I struggle because I still worry what other people think about me. And I had some real worry this week about, do I Carl by saying all this? Like, am I being disrespectful? Do dear friends of ours from the past that I'm not like talking to every day, do they think I'm disrespectful to his memory? But I have to be honest, and I know that he would want me to be. And honestly, the truth is, like, if we're going to be authentically in love, and we're going to be authentically helping people, and we're going to be authentically teaching people how to wake up, we need to authentically be able to speak our truth. And that isn't always easy for either of us to say to each other, right? It's a mirroring of our deepest inner self. And when we already said this, like, or I've said this a million times, our hardest thing in this life is to open up the deepest fears of yourself and put it right in front of someone else. And then as a couple that's being authentic, that's widows dealing from a lot of past trauma and blending, we have to look at each other's truth and decide, like, can we handle that truth? Can we love each other despite feeling like we might be secondary? Because we are second, second in line of life and marriage. But I've never felt like our love, I have felt that I am afraid that I'm not good enough so many times in this marriage because that's my wound, right? Like, but you remind me all the time that I am. And I have never felt you have treated me secondary. And I have never felt more loved and more seen and more safe. And if one thing we can talk to our listeners about, when you're guiding yourself through new choices and new relationships, maybe after loss, and your world has been shattered for whatever reason, and you're trying to re-identify who you are, like, I often wonder if like people who are coming out are feeling like this way, like, right, like they have to be this one way, and then they're like, can't fucking do it anymore. And so sometimes it takes this irrational change in order for everyone to like fuck off, sort of, for you to just then be like, I'm gay, or I'm in love. Like, I'm in love. I want a family. I want to be fucking happy, I want to tell the world that, like, it wasn't our choice to lose our marriages. We did. But it is my choice to be in this marriage. And it is my choice for every decision we have made in this marriage. We have been really conscious about moving and blending. And even though we didn't always think it all the way through, because you can't really know, what's going to happen when you do these big decisions as a blending thing. I believe that we've been conscious and we've cared a lot about our kids. We've considered them a lot in all of our choices. But at the end of the day, even for them, like, as you learned from Kate, whether or not we consider their feelings, they are going to have their grief surrounding our development and progression into this relationship, because it represents the ending of an old relationship. That's very similar for how I felt as a divorced child. Like, everything that goes in forward motion is a reminder that the past family is no longer. And we feel that too. We talked about that about Christmas. Anyway, it's an emotional day because there's a lot riding on every decision that we make. And
every day is an emotional day.
Every day in our house is an emotional day.
And that's okay. And
people pleasing is personal to us, because I've been so excited about the feedback we've gotten from the last 2 episodes. I had a listener reach out to me and tell me that she had opened up to her husband about some sexual trauma in the past that has made her question the way that she feels about herself and in a sexual way, and like her husband in a sexual way, and what she had come to discover in the authenticity talk and all the deep work that she's doing in therapy was that she didn't feel safe in normal sexual things, because in her past, she had been taught that it was unsafe to be sexual. And so in authenticity, she had been feeling all these like mixed emotions and wanted to be authentic with her husband. And it had nothing really to do with him other than the fact that she felt like she needed to be transparent. And it was so powerful to listen to, because I was thinking, like, if we talk about authenticity and our truth, and we show our truth to our partner, these are difficult conversations. And that was a difficult conversation for their marriage. But what they came to was that they love each other, they're safe with each other, and that their fears represented their trauma from the past. And it had nothing to do with the safety of the now. It was just the fear that was coming up, and when we mirror and show each other these parts of ourselves, and then our partner loves us in that and holds space for it without getting triggered with their own insecurities, that's what builds safety. And safety, I think, is almost more important than love. I think safety is love. And I wonder if what we feel is deep love is deep safety.
I don't think you can have one without the other, really.
Definitely not.
Our announcement today is that we're having a baby.
We are having
Alix
a baby.
Is pregnant, and she's due in September. And we are excited about it, but I'm sure that anyone that watches our podcast can tell we're also scared, and we have fears. And we made the decision consciously, for sure.
More consciously than any baby I've made thus far.
Me too. And we dug deep.
We actually did therapy on the choice to have a baby for over a year.
Yeah.
And actually, anyone who comes on retreat with me, it always like, I don't mean to make it ever about myself, but it does come up. So like when I give examples about things that are difficult for me, I always talk about my loss of the ability to be a mother and cancer, how I felt like the mothering was ripped from me and my ability to be there for my children in their formative years, like how I was being bounced between hospitals and out, and how that, like all loss, right? So like all losses and all things that you've taken from you, your choice. Like a lot of times we talk about in trauma, like a lot of traumas happen when you don't have choice to get out. You don't have choice to make it better. You lose your ability to make a choice. And I felt like that with my mothering throughout cancer. And so when David and we actually have been talking about having a baby. When David wanted to have a baby, I think you were just saying this in like kind of a sexy way. Yeah. On our honeymoon, he was like, we're going to get pregnant on the honeymoon. I was like, no, let's just take a minute.
I had thought about it. I had thought about it a lot because I love I love you.
I love you too.
And because I thought it would be great for us to have a baby. But I went back and forth.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is we have a blended family. It's very complicated, our life. And Alix was just starting to kind of connect with my children, and I was connecting with her kids, and all that was kind of happening. And so I didn't want to, mess that up, so to speak, or whatever. That was my thought. And then when we were on our honeymoon, on our anniversary trip, it just kind of clicked with me that if you strip away all the noise of our lives and all the have tos and all the stuff like that, that at my core, I wanted a baby.
Yeah.
And in light of living as authentic as I can, I came to the conclusion then that I wanted one. I wanted a baby. And I knew that biologically, or physically shouldn't be a problem, that we could do it. And that's what clicked with me, was that I realized that I wanted this without all the other stuff, that if life wasn't complicated, and it's always complicated, that I would want this.
Right.
And so for me, it was like a core thing. And I love Alix. I trust her. It just like getting married, it just felt like something felt right, and I used to always be paranoid of my feelings like that. I would always almost shun them. If I felt something strongly, I would, shouldn't be, I shouldn't pursue that because it's such a strong feeling. That I kind of operate under the idea that if you followed your emotions, that you might make mistakes. Now I know that whether you follow your emotions or not, you still make mistakes.
Right, mistakes.
But if you don't follow how you feel, you are following the reverse of how you feel or how you don't feel, and that doesn't feel good. So why not if you're going to make mistakes no matter what, why not trust an inner feeling that something is right? And it may not turn out, but at least you made the decision in the right path. Whereas I used to I probably would have made a pros and cons type list, something crazy like that. Seriously. It was
logical.
Yeah, everything had to be super logical, and making decisions based on emotions I thought was dangerous.
Well, I think a lot of people want to be logical in parenting.
Right.
And you have to be logical to the point where you're like, okay, is the timing okay in the sense that, like, can we afford? Right. Do we have enough resources?
Yeah.
Like, there's logic
the whole
to it.
Best practices thing, what would be best? And that, I think that's just a slippery slope of unknown. And worse than unknown, you're really fooling yourself thinking you do know and you can predict and you are going to control. And those things are just, in my mind, mythologies. We really can't control all those variables.
No.
But what I can tell you is the way I feel. That is something I can express. And I feel like I want to have a child with you. And
we are excited. Yeah, we're having a baby, and this decision has literally been a lot of work. And I know it's funny, like with our previous marriages, we got pregnant like that. Like we were, let's think about a baby, and we were pregnant.
Yeah.
So we have that very shared experience. And then we both, with this decision, like in the beginning, we almost went into that same gut feeling of like, we should have a baby. And then when we went to get into it, not to get too detailed, but I have a Mirena. So it was really like an active choice to, like, anyone out there who's a, act first, think later kind of person. Mirenas are wonderful for that because you actually have to schedule an appointment and you have to, like, really think it through. And so that was actually like a really good way for us to, like, have this discussion about, like, well, okay, well, fine. You want to have a baby. We're going to remove the Mirena. Like,
that's a perfect example, though. Had you not had the Mirena, we would have had a child anyway, and we would have had a child for the exact same reasons, which is we wanted to have a child.
Yes. And so I honestly think that you can't plan out too much in terms of parenting and children, because this isn't how life works, as you know. Like, tomorrow we could die.
Right.
the baby could live or not live, right? That's a big fear for us. More loss potential was a big maybe when we made this decision.
Yeah.
Anyone who goes on retreats with me, as I was saying, knows how big of an issue this is for me. And like, I have done all this work to heal and make sure that I'm here having a baby for the right reasons, not because of loss, but because of this marriage, which is really why I'm here, you know. And I want to have a baby with David, and I want us to have our own child together. It's really hard to imagine a marriage for me, like, and this deep of love and having no shared biology to leave behind. Like, that's something huge for me. I don't know why, but I feel like we were meant to create a mix of us.
I mean, I could imagine it, but it doesn't seem as great as with it.
Right.
You know, I mean, the truth is, you're a wonderful mom. Wonderful mom. You're a wonderful wife. And I cannot imagine anyone I'd rather have a child with. And I'm 50 years old, but I'm not 72.
Well, I think it's important that in this episode, so how do we relate this exciting news that we're having a baby, something that honestly we've been wanting for a long time? How do we laugh and say that we're every faux pas ever made, right? We have an age gap of 8 years. David's older than me. We got engaged.
That's probably the biggest shock of the podcast, right?
I don't think so.
I know everybody out there thought I was the younger one.
We got engaged 8 months after we were dating. Faux pas. We moved in together in he and Betsy's house. Major faux pas in the South, like that, and actually was kind of hard even for me. I left my career in essence, not fully, but I left my business and allowed my business partner to kind of take more of the reins so that I could be with David. Like, for me, that was like kind of one of the bigger faux pas for myself. I was very afraid to trust in that kind of trust fall.
Yeah, we moved. We left our families.
We left our families.
I should
He
say.
changed jobs. I sort of like I'm selling my business, my stand-up Pilates studio in New Orleans. So many, so many huge decisions against the advice of others. And having a baby I'm 41 years old, by the way. David is 50. We're also too old. We have too many children. People love to tell me that. Number 6, I'm like, I laugh. Like, at this point, I've gotten so comfortable with making others uncomfortable with our faux pas life that I'm just wanted to say to the listeners that, like, you too can live a faux pas life based on your internal emotions, as David is saying. So living for yourself, and you'll maybe never be happier. And I can't say, and you could feel the emotion in the get-go of this, is because we got into a little bit of a tiff before this got started, because David got a little emotional around the idea that I was going to tell a lot about my fertility journey. And he was like, well, I don't really want this to sound like your fertility journey is why you had this baby. And I'm like, let me be very clear to the audience. My fertility journey in cancer will forever be probably the greatest grief facet of my loss story. It just will. And it defines a lot of who I am. It has also, like all loss and grief, made me the impassioned mother. It has bridged a gap for me that my worthiness is only in my work, and made me realize that my true purpose in this world is to be a mom, and that I am here to love these 5 babies. And whatever higher power you believe in, I believe that I have been put on this path to mother all these children in my house and to have another baby. And I'm so lucky that I am healthy enough and still fertile enough to make this choice to be a mom again, and that I get to rewrite, with the love of my life, all of these patterns. I get to rewrite so many patterns in family by choice, where before, like all of us who haven't had a tragedy and who might be sleepwalking, you can be in love, you can have a good marriage, you can be married to a great person, and you could be taking all of that for granted and making just choices and a lot of my choices were in people pleasing.
Yeah, I was thinking one of the things that made it easier for me to decide to want to have a child versus stop having children was a basic philosophy of life changed for me when Betsy died and when we met and fell in love. Was I used to feel strongly, and I've talked about this before in the podcast, I'll mention it again. I used to, one of my main tenets in life previously was to get through things.
Mm-hmm.
And including children. So I thought, well, I've just got to get them into college, or just got to get them out of the house, or just got to get them into grade school, or whatever. Your children is something you get through. Well, just think about how great our retirement is going to be when we're done with children, whatever thinking. And
Right. When they pass the test and they get through the thing this week.
Yeah, we flipped that kind of on its head, and you realize life is not, at least for us, something you get through. It's something that you live every day, every minute. And if you're living every day and every minute, then you can do things that you don't necessarily need to get through, like having another child. In fact,
well, when you look at Kate in your episode, like I was thinking, even that was like so big for them, right? Because David always wanted Kate to be okay, and that's like a big part of like her journey. And like she verbalized what he already knows to be true because of regret and loss. Because of regret and loss, we have to look at a very clear lens of our problems, our mistakes, and what we've placed on our children, because we're starting over. And so like you often don't, in your current life, if you're not in loss or restarting, you don't always get a redo. Like patterns get set. And I'm not saying you can't recreate patterns, but for those of you who are already married and in patterns that aren't working for you, it's really hard to uncouple those. It's really hard to break those down. It's really hard to be honest when you create all this facades and you've been going along to get along. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit. And I had a lot of conversations this week post Kate's episode about my mom friends saying like, it made me realize that I just want everything to be okay. And so I'm not letting my kid feel any of their emotions or any of their pain or any of their failures, because it's a reflection on how I don't want them to feel what I felt when I was a kid, which was abandoned, alone, a failure. I was in shame. I was scared. I had to be perfect. You name the trauma, you name the childhood wound. We're going to take that wound and we're going to be damn sure that we don't let our kids feel that, because we never want them to be in pain like we were. Okay, well, screw me. Like, you don't realize that when you do that, you're like actually halting them from living their actual authentic life and feeling what they need to feel in order to learn and operate. And that's the thing. So David got so overwhelmed that Kate had to learn to not be okay on her own. And in that, I think she's had tremendous growth, and I think the two of them have had honest conversations and have really built a brand new version of their relationship. And It's so weird when you look back on that. Like, we're not only like learning to reparent our current children and from a better perspective, in a more healed way, in a more regulated way, the opportunity to have another child and to realize that it's not about getting through it. It's not about doing the things that are checking boxes and the milestones of life to like,
it's not about crossing the finish line.
There's no fit. You don't want to. Kate went to college. Like, he was like, look at all this time I lost with her. And I'm like, hindsight's always 20/20, right? Like, but now you're like, the most important moments of our life we learned through death, which was cards, coffee, small things, every day being there for your kids. I mean, let me tell you, driving and picking my kids, which I don't do all the time because of work. When I do, I recognize that in those moments, there's the most authenticity and honesty happening with my kids and what's going on in the world. And
or just a sunrise on a Tuesday morning.
Right. You're just, these little moments are what life is. It's not the big moments. And so in the past, we always lived for the big moments, and like, we're choosing a big thing to grow a human. And let me tell you, at 41, I'm actually feeling it. It's a little harder this round than it was.
So am I.
Yeah. We're not as spring chickeny as we used to be, but I've also never felt more present. Like, I recognize that I'm feeling every part of this pregnancy. I am trying to allow my body to make these majestic changes that the world, of course, like, you feel unsexy or you feel unlike yourself as your body is completely becoming foreign. And, a lot of physical health has always been something that I can maintain, which makes me feel regulated, or probably in some degrees in control. and I have a loss of control in that, right? Like everything's shifting for us. But I'm aware that the reason that we got into a little bit of an argument and a little bit of friction is happening is that there's nothing this massive that isn't so emotional. There's nothing this important in life to us besides these choices. And in that, in authenticity, we really have to be honest about all of it, right? What's the truth? Where are we? Who are we? What part of our past helped us to get to this decision? And how do we stay present to each other and stay honest to each other about where we are and what we're choosing? And so it's really exciting. It's also really petrifying, you know? It is. We told our kids, and, you know, actually they all really responded incredibly. I mean, Jack had a meltdown, which is like, I think, you know, teenage 17-year-olds, like, I think their natural response is always a little bit of like friction or anger.
Well, yeah, any change is hard, I think, at that age, or really any age. I actually didn't think his response was
Rebounded quickly.
Yeah, they all did.
They all did.
The preteens and early teens were interesting. They are hitting that kind of egocentric stage where the only thing they could really think was, how's this going to affect me, you know, and my stuff.
Yeah.
But one of them was just like, literally, like, you know what, I really don't care as long as I don't have to change diapers. We're like, okay, no problem.
It's interesting. It's interesting to watch like how all of this has played out. And maybe for me, it's sometimes interesting. The most interesting is because I've been thinking about how this would play out, you know, ever since we got together, and what it would be like if this dream of mine had come true. And here we are in it, and it's funny. It's like, it is everything and more that I wanted it to be. And then in some ways it's also completely different. And isn't that just how life works, right? And so I think one of the most important things I wanted to translate was, we're sitting in this chair, even struggling to get through this podcast for some reason. Like, this podcast for me feels a little harder because there's not absolutes in it. Like, I feel like when I talk about other topics, like, I have absolutes for you. Like, I'm like, this is what's happened for the most part. Like, I can really use my experiential learning to tell you like what I've learned from something. And at least I've seen enough through my coaching and help across the grief path and the trauma path to get a kind of a framework for how a lot of people handle this.
But I mean, this is the stick, right? This is the mindfulness as an ascetic is got to be pretty easy. But mindfulness while you're pregnant and 50 with a house full of kids and careers and everything, that's the trick. And that's what we strive to do, is to remain mindful, even in conflict and fear. And when we're scared, that's the hardest part. And honestly, I mean, I was just thinking how different it is that I can feel comfortable telling you how I feel, even if it's not really fair, you know? But I can tell you how I feel so that you know what you're saying, or what I hear you saying makes me feel a certain way. And that being allowed to, or being in a safe place where you can tell somebody how you feel and risk being wrong or offending or whatever, it's a huge gift. It's a huge, huge gift.
Right.
And I always feel better and know that we are closer when we tell each other how we feel, even if that feeling is unfounded or just a triggered thing or our own trauma or whatever. It doesn't matter. Just voicing in a lot of ways, just voicing the concern makes it kind of almost evaporate. It just kind of.
Well, and the reciprocating end of like his concern with this launch was he didn't want my fertility story in the past to sound like, and what he really meant, and you tell me if I'm wrong, you have a fear that I'm only having a baby with you because I lost my ability to have a children when Carl got cancer, and it was
actually
a huge grief.
I've had this fear since we met. I've had a fear.
Oddly enough, we haven't actually verbalized
We never
this in
talked about this,
therapy,
yeah.
and so we get into this
Yeah.
podcast, which is why there's maybe a little bit of like
I had a fear
unsaid
in the
friction.
beginning, particularly when I realized how wonderful you were. I had a fear in the beginning that the only interest you had in me was my grief and my loss.
Oh yeah, he said,
And my,
"Are you here to? What did you say? Am I your project?" I was like, "What the hell?"
I
was
had
like,
this fear that I was just a project, that you were going to help me, and then that was going to be it. Yep, I helped another widow, kind of get through the trauma. I hooked him up with a therapist. That's my job as a widow is to.
I do have I do help a lot of widows. They come to me, I help them. I don't know.
I felt differently about you. I wanted to make sure that you felt that way about me. I didn't. You were definitely not a project. I thought you were wonderful.
You were not a project for me either. Well, in fact, actually, like when we became friends, I've already told everyone this.
So I guess that to tie in, there is a little bit of fear in me that this baby is just part of the project, and I don't like that.
How would this baby be the project?
Just a facet in the project. See, so like we're healing so well that I can have a baby
and see, isn't this so like
a weird thought?
It is a very weird thought.
Yeah.
And this is so honest. So we get into this podcast today. And like, I already know this is authentic. So, I mean, I'm just going with it, but I've been a little like, a miffed. Is that a word?
Miffed.
Yeah. That's what I was looking for. For those who know me know I always like misuse words. So I've been miffed a little bit. Like he got upset and I was like, wait, what? We had to restart 5 or 6 times. I was like, so you're upset about something we've literally never talked about. And we were supposed to be like, we're because that's really how we feel. But we're being authentic today because the truth is it's come out that he is extremely insecure, that I'm only having a baby with him because Carl was not able to have children right away because he went to max radiation, like the first freaking week being diagnosed. And it was a massive grief of mine to not have any more children and just have that taken from me. And as I already said, like trauma is a lot of like when people take away your choices. And I felt like not only did I lose the ability to have, I actually thought he would heal and go into remission. And I thought we just wouldn't be able to have any more children. And then I also felt like being the mom to my babies, they were babies at the time, the toddler and a baby.
In cancer therapy. Right.
In cancer therapy was also another mothering loss where I like missed these vital times because I was so bouncing between treatments, hospitals, work, trying to keep everything together, like being present in the moment with their little milestones. I also was doing a let's just get through it kind of vibe. And my anxiety was so high.
Yeah.
So I said to him off camera, and I'll say it now, it would be non-authentic, inauthentic of me if I didn't tell this piece of my story, because those people who have been through cancer, who are young, who lose their fertility for whatever reason, it's a massive loss. It's not supported in the medical community. Very little do they talk about it. And you just have this thing taken from you. And cancer's like that, and illness. Yeah. But that has nothing to do with us in this choice, other than like all grief and all the loss that we've had. In that loss, it made me really start to look at mothering as a whole.
We didn't talk to Abel about this, but I wonder if he felt a little bit of that too.
I wonder too, because he lost a baby.
His ability to father kind of taken from him.
Right. And when that's ripped from you, and in even moments of like, because your grief takes you out, like for 5 years while he was sick. And then I have to even say like another year or 2 when it was just so foggy post-death, like it's just survival mode. That's like not how you want to be a mother. And in my head, I had this, I was raised with like, I already said this, like everything in the external was like, button up and put your monogram on, and like it needs to look right, and you need to put your napkin in your lap and use the right fork and go to the country club, and like you got to do the right things and look away and present yourself in a buttoned up fashion, and you need to be thin and you need to have it all together, and everything needs to look together. Inside, I was never together. I mean, and now inside, outside, I'm just kind of like, whatever, it's all out there. But I wasn't able to fulfill like cancer and death and loss and all this. And even David and I, we no longer fit the Christmas card picture that I grew up with. And it was so upsetting, like me not being able to live in those images in your head of what you believe family is down to Christmas. And you know this, like, I'm like, I just said, well, I can't have my tree. And like, why can't it's like everything's compromised. And then people questioning your role in it. And then you question your own role in it. And so it's just like everything is taken from you. And what I learned in that loss was my being a mother was the most important thing. And like I've been working on my trauma, my mother wound with like 2 therapists. And I realized that like I think I've been put on this earth to mother and mother maybe friends or mother people and in some ways I had to learn to mother myself because in the past I think I was mothering so much that I wasn't mothering myself. But this choice, now that I'm healing in the mothering, I'm trying to say this articulately the right way. This is the hardest choice I've ever made that should have been the easiest choice. If I was being unhealthy and people pleasing, I would have been pregnant on the night of our wedding because A, I could get pregnant easily, and B, I want to have a baby with you. But I wanted to show up as the mother of your baby in a way that I can't, and this is why this podcast is hard for me. I don't even know if the words for it, but I needed to be the mother that I want to be, and not the mother that I see in my head, not the bullshit mother that has external shit looking all together, but the mother behind closed doors that is like on the ground reading a book and playing, the mother that lets her career go that everyone's probably that I would have judged 6 years ago, the mother that I didn't get to have, the mother that I think I couldn't be to my 2 that I am working on being right now for them. And sometimes it's a little too late. We're having to do a lot of back work. And I believe that my highest calling is to mother. And I just knew that I had to do some healing around my worthiness to sit in this mothering role with you and be your wife before I could agree to it. So it really took me a while to say yes. And then I was scared, like, okay, what if I can't have babies after all this, like, after all this work and mothering processing? And so it's funny to hear him say, like, I was worried that you only had babies with me because you couldn't with Carl. And I can say that my inability to have children with Carl was the most heartbreaking thing that has ever happened in my world. It ate me alive in ways that I just can't describe. And I love my babies. And they are the first true unconditional love that I've ever had in my life. And I felt like I, in theory, had a lot of love in my life, but being their mom has saved my life. And it was painful to think that anything in the world could compromise that for me. And it wasn't Carl's fault, right? But this baby, maybe it is a fucking project in a way of healing but it feels like I've climbed a mountain of grief and I'm standing sort of at the mountain, and I know that like I worked so hard to get here. I had to let go of a lot of pain and fear to be able to choose this choice. And this little baby growing inside of me, I have manifested you for a long time. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without you. Like, your love and your support is the reason that I'm able to choose a yes in almost every way of this authentic path. And that's what I'm saying to the listeners out there. Like, you have to find friends or partners, especially in love, partners who can be safe enough to let you be authentic. Be safe enough to tell you, I'm scared that you are only having a baby with me because you couldn't with Carl. So that I can be safe enough to tell you that was the biggest heartbreak of my life. That Carl and I had all this shit robbed from us. It wasn't fair to him. We just became dad and mom. Like, we didn't even have time to fucking settle into that before. It was like just robbed. But I'm here because of you. And I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be in this podcast. I wouldn't be helping others. You're not my project. You're my savior. You are my safety. You are the reason that I'm able to be brave enough to do all of this. And this baby is a culmination of a lot of healing and work. And I can do it because I unapologetically don't give a shit. If you are out there listening and wanting to judge me, I'm okay with that, because if you can judge someone sitting in these chairs after everything we've walked through for doing anything that creates more love in their life, you don't understand love, and you don't understand loss, and you don't understand how hard we have fought to be here. And that's okay. You're not there yet. And I hope one day you will strip away all the fake exterior and what we're supposed to do, and you get to go inside and be brave enough to know that we get this one life, and that in this one life, I may have to let go of a lot of career things that I love. I love my career. I love Pilates. I love teaching. I love Wake. I love all the things that I'm doing. All these are passion projects for me. But I know that all of my work for the first time in my life is secondary to this choice. It's been secondary to this choice. This baby is secondary to our choice to choose family again. And I know in my funeral that those who love me and support me and my people in my work and my family and my friends, they're going to understand that this choice is everything to me, because my family, my children, my stepchildren, David, that is what I care about. I care about that when I die. At my funeral, if there's 6 people there, this baby, my 5 children, speaking about who I am as a person, and that I was there for them and helped them and was a good mom, like, that's what really matters to me. Not accolades, not how well this podcast does. I love this podcast, but not that my app gets it together where I jump from a roof to be excited about it. Like,
this is something we do quite a bit of. We cry when we're happy.
I know. Well, because it's a mix of all emotions, right? Like, everything in our heart sits with, like, we are able to be this joyful and in gratitude because we have had such suffering. And this baby, I know how important it is because I had to lose the ability to have one, to understand how much I wanted one. And I am so lucky I lost a marriage to find you. And it's such a blessing to have the ability to get to do this again, and not just do it, but like really live authentically. And we've lost so many people in the process. And like, I always am like, in love and light, I don't need anyone to understand us. And I hope that everyone listening, I hope that you live your life like that, because it is fucking scary, but you don't even care because you're so fucking at peace and happy, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter anymore, because when you surround yourself with the truth and safety in relationships, and therefore respect and love and authenticity and not pleasing, you're there to actually, because it is a pleasure to be there. I mean, not all the time, but most of the time, you know what I mean? Like, because when it's not a pleasure, you're able to say that, right? You're able to be communicative and honest. Yeah. And even though we started this podcast sort of in a fight, like, not a fight, but like a shocking disagreement where I was like, what? How much am I lucky that he gets to tell me the truth? And how lucky am I that I didn't react, because I, in the same position, know how it feels to be afraid that you're only with me because Betsy died. And the truth is, he is with me because Betsy died. But I have to, in my heart, believe that I am worthy to be in this marriage. So do you. And to all my people out there who are widows in new relationships, you have to believe that you're worthy of love and life. You didn't want this tragedy to happen, but it did. And the remainder, as we like to laugh, David turned 50, the second half of your life, you get to choose. You are the author. You get to recreate, because you have to recreate. It's a have to and a get to. It's like That's a mindset. I have to recreate my life because it's no longer. But I get to recreate my life, which means I get to make new choices and I get to rebirth and I get to, that's going to be our next retreat, Rebirth 2024. I'm rebirthing as a mother. I am rebirthing as a wife. I'm rebirthing, holding my seat as Mrs. Long. That title is still like, feels a little stuck in my throat to get out. But I am proud to be that.
I think rebirth is a great place to end our happy baby announcement.
Yeah, it's exciting.
And it is very emotional, but we're extremely happy and extremely lucky.
We are.
And I've never felt so sure about something. And
Yeah,
so it feels so right.
It feels so right. And that's what I wanted to send across, is that authenticity doesn't mean that you're not having hard conversations.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you're not scared.
Authenticity does not mean that you're not insecure, afraid, crying, afraid, insecure, as we have said a million times. It means that you're speaking your truth, even if you have to do it with your eyes closed and maybe holding your breath, waiting for the person to respond. It's giving the person that you love the opportunity to love you as you are. It's giving your family the opportunity for you to love them as they are, as they really are. And I posted this week about David Levy's mom, her fear of her little boy that twirled. Did you read this quote? It's so beautiful. Her fear about him being gay in the 80s. And she was talking about how the 80s was so dysregulated and that she was so afraid how the world would treat her little boy who loved to twirl. Little did she know that he would change the world, is what she said. She should have known better. And it sums up parenting in so many ways, and it sums up this podcast in so many ways, where it's like, if we try to change our loved ones or change ourselves to protect our loved ones, so change ourselves or change others, we are not allowing our loved ones to be, and we are not be loved, and we are not allowing ourselves to love them as they are, and we are not allowing ourselves to be seen and loved as we are. And I think if you die in that state, that is the greatest tragedy of your life. And sometimes we just don't know that we're in that state. But that is what Wake is about. Bringing awareness to the inside of your depths of who you are. I like to call it your essential self, the self that you were and are without the world pressing you to be something other than who you are. And I hope to love this baby, the baby's essential self. I hope the baby will see me in my essential self. I hope that our marriage will love each other in our essential nature.
I think that's a great place to end on.
It is.
Thank y'all for watching, and don't forget about our app to help with some of this dysregulation and communication, meditation.
So many cool things coming out in the app. Just stay with us right now. We're
She's working feverishly on it.
We are, and I've got like the amazing sound producer, Andrew. You've probably seen him. He's like a cool hipster who is doing all this amazing sound work. So we're doing EMDR style bilateral healing sounds. So if you're like not into meditation, I totally am, but like sometimes it can be challenging. We've got some sound therapy coming in from Katie and Andrew that are so awesome. I know David likes quick somatic work, and so I'll also be bringing more somatic work that's coming up soon. So in the next few weeks, you're going to see a lot of new content coming on the app. Bear with us. We got the developers working on a couple new major facets. So we're reorganizing, but there's a lot of great stuff on there now. We have breath work, we have movement, we have anti-anxiety work, fight, flight, or freeze stuff. There's lots of cool stuff coming. So we're really thrilled and excited to be able to reach people. I'm very grateful for Vincent Viton, the company that I partnered with. He's a Forbes contributor. You can look him up. He's a really wonderful businessman and a really impassioned app owner. Also, the Dads Club. He's got a really cool app, by the way, that's so cool for dads who want to not be 50-50 partners with their spouse, but to be 100% participatory in the fathering. And it's really cool. He's got lots of cool resources. So check out his app. I'm lucky enough to be partnered with them. So thank you so much for today. This little nugget is growing. We're 14 weeks. The baby is as big as a think it's like a peach this week, which is exciting to think about, and starting to feel some mini kicks, and my jeans don't fit anymore. We're officially going into big girl pants, and for the first time ever, I'm getting boobs. So that's, that's where we are. So stay tuned. Next week, we're going to reveal the gender of the baby. So that'll be exciting. And we're going to finalize our talk on authenticity and people pleasing.
Thank y'all.
This has been Wake the F Up podcast, hosted by Alix and David Long. Be sure to check out other episodes where our community of experts share tools and ideas to help you wake to the life inside of you. If you enjoyed this episode of Wake the F Up, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join the Wake community by downloading our app. Just search for The Wake Wellness in the Apple or Android App Store. And follow us on Instagram at The Wake Wellness. Thanks for listening.